Hello, this is Tim, and welcome to TimBatSea. Some of you might know, I don't know if you follow this or not, but I'm just back from a 1,400-mile ocean passage in my sailboat, where I took my sailboat from the East Coast all the way out to the Sargasso Sea and down to Puerto Rico. Chronicled this in a whole bunch of videos that I'm slowly putting together and releasing on my other channel. If it's something that you think you might be interested in, please come over and check it out. It's SV Paquita. I'll put a link in the description. And if I get my stuff together, which I normally do, maybe I'll even put a link up over here or over here. I know, I never can tell. Anyway, it doesn't always work on all the different platforms anyway, but there'll definitely be a link in the description, or you can just search for SV Paquita. But anyway, getting back to this video, unlike a lot of the boat handling videos that we normally do, this time my engineer let me film him while we were doing some maintenance, or he was doing some maintenance, and having the trusty Dalton help him out. So, you know, just like your car or anything else, tugboats need maintenance too, and in this case, I was going to say an oil and filter change, but you'll see it's not exactly that easy. So stick around, and hope you like the video, and thank you guys so much for watching. Alright, enjoy the show. Now on your car you might change your oil every 3,000 or 5,000 miles, but on a tugboat we do it a little differently. We actually we have a schedule for hours that we run, and then we take samples every 30 days, and every 30 days, regardless of how much we run the engines, we send them off to a laboratory. The laboratory analyzes the samples and tells us what to do. You know, if we need to take a look at something. Incidentally, I should tell you, look, there's 9 bottles in here, and for a little trivia question, see how many of you guys can figure out why we take 9 samples and send them off to the laboratory for tests. But anyway, to let you know how things go, when we go, we don't change the oil and filters together all the time. What happens is, the oil we usually change that around every 4,000 hours. 4,000 hours of operation. The only time we change that, you know, that alters, is if we have a problem, if the samples come back and there's elevated whatever comes back. If something comes back in the samples that suggests we should change the oil sooner, then we do that. But usually the oil goes about every 4,000 hours, and we change it. But we change the filters every 1,000 hours, whether they need it or not. And the filters is what Danny, our engineer, is working on right now. And you know, like any good engineer or somebody in the wheelhouse, the captain, the engineer, it's not just about, you know, running a boat isn't just boat handling. There's also, you know, a lot of the people in the crew have to come up, and they usually look to the top as they're moving up. So it's important that I take people under the wing and try to help them and teach them how to run a boat and give them my thought processes. Well, the same thing happens in the engine room too. Now in this case, you might recognize Dalton on the other side. Dalton is helping Danny, but Danny's really helping Dalton too. And by doing this, someone like Dalton, who's been doing this for a number of years and is ready to move up, he really has 3 choices he can go. He can go in the engine room and be an engineer, or he can go in the wheelhouse and become a mate, and then eventually a captain, or he can leave the tugs together and go out and be a tankerman. But anyway, whether he goes in the wheelhouse or not, it's still a good idea that he has a good working knowledge of the engine room and all the systems and how things work. So when Danny does stuff like this, he usually needs a hand, and he usually brings one of the ABs or the OSs with us. And for those that don't know, AB is able-bodied seaman, and OS is an ordinary seaman. The AB being the more senior or higher up the ladder than the OS. Anyway, right here, he has taken off the end plug for our oil filters, and as you can see, he's pulled one of the old filters out. Now he's pulling another out, And these are cartridge filters. They're not the spin-on type that many cars have, but I think more and more cars are now having cartridge filters as well, but it depends on how they do it. Anyway, these take 3, and if you're looking back at Danny, you can see there's 3 brand new ones all lined up, and those will go end to end, and they go in this tube, and the oil gets passed through them, and hopefully if there's any fine particulates or anything that gets suspended in there, they gets held in the filter medium. So that's why they're pulling it out. These engines usually are kept, we usually run them at around 180 degrees Fahrenheit, and so a good time to do this is not when the engines get cold. And in fact, big engines like this, some of you guys know this, but some other people might not know it. So I'll tell you, big engines like this rarely ever are allowed to be cooled down. These newer engines, I say newer like this, as opposed to the big EMDs, which were old train motors, that 2-stroke EMDs that I ran years ago. Some of those that were around from the 70s, they said, since the 70s, those engines had never cooled down. And the reason why you do something like that is that with the expansion and contraction, you let an engine cool down. When you warm it back up again, it starts leaking in places that it didn't have leaks before, whether that be water leaks. And in an engine like this, we have salt water, fresh water. The fresh water is really coolant, but the salt water is cooling the coolant through a heat exchanger, and then oil and transmission fluid coolers, and in this case, in our engine here, we have a aftercooler, so the air that is being pressurized by the turbo that increases in temperature gets cooled down before the boost air goes back into the cylinders. So, geez, I forgot where I was going with all that, but anyway, I'm just trying to talk to you so you have something to hear. I originally had the sound up on this, but all you hear is the generators. And this is something that I get a lot in the comments. A lot of people are always asking me, and they say, "Oh, can you just? We want to hear the engines, and we want to hear this and all that." What you hear in the engine room most of the time, because the engines are so big and so the RPMs are so low, you usually hear one of 2 things in the engine room, whether the main engines are running or not. And that's the generators and the fans. We have 2 massive fans that blow air into the engine room and 2 massive fans that suck it out. And those are the things that usually show up on camera, or you hear on camera the most. But anyway, now Danny's done on this one side. He's taking the old ones out, taking the new ones, and now he's going over to the other engine. Here, I'm just pulling out some new filters so you can see what the cartridges look like. And oh yeah, I remember what I was telling you before. I was telling you that these engines, they usually run about 180 degrees Fahrenheit, but we like to do this job. We don't want the people changing the filters to get burnt, so we usually do it when we have a few hours off so it can cool down, like the night before. And if you wonder why these engines never cool down, I mean, I told you why they shouldn't cool down, but they usually have block heaters. So in this case, they'll shut the block heaters off the night before and let the engines get down to like 120 degrees, and then they can pop these off without anyone getting really burnt, maybe 100 degrees, something like that. But anyway, so they do that, and so now I'm setting up on the other side of the other engine, and Danny's setting up. These things are what we affectionately call diapers. And people might think they're rags or paper towels. They're actually a really cool 3M product that people in the boating world are familiar with. But if you're not from there and you're watching this, what's special about these is that they're oil-absorbent rags, or cloths. But what makes them special is that the fabric they have doesn't absorb any water. So in other words, if there is oil in the bilge or water in the bilge or, God forbid, in the stuffing box or overboard, you could throw one of these onto an oil slick and it will pull the oil or the fuel or the gasoline or whatever into the white part, and obviously it doesn't stay white when it does that, but it won't pull any water in. So they're very special in that they float on top of water and they don't suck up any water, but they only suck up the nasties that you're trying to keep out of the environment. So Danny gets this all set up. While they're doing that, they're recovering some of the old oil from the other filters, getting filter buckets ready so that when they pull it off, they don't cover the whole engine room in grease and oil. Many people comment, if you haven't seen it, I have a couple engine room tours, 3,000 horsepower and a 4,200 horsepower engine room tours. Many people that see those videos often comment on how clean we keep the engines. And I don't think it's us, I think it's our entire industry. Most of the people in these industries that these engines represent a huge amount of money. And not only does the engine represent a lot of money, but when something goes wrong, the time that a working boat is out of service literally costs hundreds of dollars every minute it's not working. So it's really important to keep a clean engine room, not only for safety, to be clean and so you don't slip or have a fire hazard or anything like that, but a clean work surface also lets us see when there's a problem. If there is an oil leak and it leaks on it, if you have if a head starts leaking and your engine's covered in oil, you won't notice it. But if your engine's all nice and clean and you see a little black dribble down, you say, oh, we're starting to leak here. And so that's one of the reasons why it's so important that we keep everything neat and tidy. I mean, obviously we want to stay safe and do all that sort of stuff as well, but that's what it is. Anyway, right now Danny's taking off the end cover. He's got the diapers in place so that when the oil comes out, most of it will fall into Dalton's bucket, but any that gets anywhere else, he'll minimize the cleanup that he has because he has diapers ready to go. Like I say, we call them diapers, but I think the real name is oil absorbent rags. And so now he's taking the end cover off. While he's doing that, I should also tell you that each of these on the 3000 here, these are 12-cylinder 12-cylinder 35 12s, Caterpillars. They hold about 125 gallons of oil in each one. And so that's how we're able to run 4,000 hours. You would be able to run longer in your car if you had a bigger reservoir. So because these engines are running, almost 20 to 24 hours a day, they have a big capacity and you can do all that sort of stuff. So that's kind of cool. So now he's taking out another element. Get everything clean, start to put the new ones back in. I had spoken in other videos about how Dalton is so good on deck that as much as I don't want to lose him, I see him as a real asset to the company and that he's going to be great in the wheelhouse. Well, if you look at what he's doing here, he's not just good on deck. One of the things I tell deckhands often is that a good deckhand does what you want, but a great deckhand doesn't have to be told. If you notice, Danny, it's noisy in there. They can't hear each other or anything. Danny turns around, Dalton has the next thing ready to go. He was just cleaning up on the floor over there, and that's a really good sign. That's somebody that's really on top of the game and obviously this doesn't happen overnight. He's been doing this for a while, but he hasn't been doing it with his eyes closed, or in the vernacular of the day, he hasn't been doing it with his head in his phone all the time. Like so many kids today, I keep thinking, someday, somewhere, oh God, I sound like my father talking this way, but you wonder how many kids are going to wake up one day and say, oh my God, I've lost half of my life because I've been staring at a phone. Maybe you guys are watching this video on a phone, and if that's the case, that's fine. You can watch this. Don't stop watching on your phone on account of me saying stupid things. Anyway, Danny's going through and he does a crisscross pattern, torquing these down. Now what they're doing over here It's important. Danny's standing by 2 buckets over there. Now Dalton's by 1 bucket. If you'll notice, one is clear. One has a clear bag in it, and the other has a black plastic bag. The black plastic bag is normal trash from the engine room. The clear one is what we call oily waste. So anything that has any sort of oil doesn't get thrown in the trash. It goes into the clear bags, and we have it clear so everyone knows that there's oily, greasy stuff in there, and that goes to a recycling center. Over here, these are the big Raycor filters that we have, and there's 3 of them. And sometimes some people think that what you do is you use one, then you use another, and you use another. That's not really how they're set up on these boats. You use one all the time, and then if you use 2 all the time. And when you start noticing that you're pulling a vacuum, you know that the vacuum gauge starts showing that it's starting to become clogged. Those 2 they flip over to the 3rd one, and while that 3rd one is being used, then they swap out the other 2, and then they can switch back. Right now, I'm just walking around the engines to give you a quick little tour of everything while they're doing their cleanup, and they're stowing everything away there. You can see they have to put covers on everything, and we have to. It's kind of odd, but we have to be mindful of spontaneous combustion. This is where sometimes if you improperly dispose of oily rags, and I don't think so much. I mean, the oil I don't think is as bad. Once again, I'm not an engineer, but I think it has more to do with paint thinners and that sort of stuff. But you have to be careful that you don't create something where spontaneous combustion happens, and that's where you'll have a rag that starts to evaporate and starts to build up heat until it actually starts to ignite. So we have to keep things all in steel buckets down in the engine room, so that if there wasn't a spontaneous combustion, it would run out of air. And so that's why all those are there. But I wanted to tell you about the clear bags for oily waste. That's something that's good. Here's a look at the reverse gear. And I'm trying to show you how big the shaft is. But each engine has these massive shafts. I don't know the exact dimension. I bet they're every bit of 12 to 14 inches across. They're pretty big. And those are, you'll see that each engine has 2 turbos. And the white right there, that's coolant that goes down. And the coolant actually... These engines do not have salt water on it. I told you that some engines do. These engines have keel coolers that aren't actually in the keels, but actually go on the side where there's a recess in the hull with a grate on the outside, so the water flowing by cools it cools a bunch of stuff. There's in this recess in the hull, there's a bunch of things that are there. One of them is the engine coolant. Another one is the engine oil, another one is the transmission oil, and then one's for the generators and all that other stuff. But now he's just cleaning it up, and I think we're getting towards the end of the video here. And that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and really appreciate it. And you guys take care, and I'll see you guys on the water.